Alrighty, Thursday, April 25th, session recap time, starting off with ES. So one of the ideas that we have been discussing so far this week, as early as Monday even, was the idea that the current structure could turn into essentially a near-term range. It's kind of one of the ideas we've been talking about. If you missed that, go back and watch some of the session recaps. All of these things are recorded. And so what we wanted to see primarily was this reaction versus this near-term high right through here, this near-term resistance zone. Yesterday, you get that rejection. Then into yesterday's session recap, what I had mentioned was we want to see how price is going to be trading versus yesterday's range, simply because price up here is in a key area, right? Sellers, what they needed to do was show pretty swift follow through below that 50-80 level, right? Following the rejection of 51.20, what they really want to see is that break down through that 50-80 level. That was the discussion from yesterday. So following Meta earnings, we have that slight gap lower, right? Price just kind of oscillating there near that 50-80 level, that main watch for this morning, as well as the prior day low right through here where my cursor is. Now, pre-GDP, again, what we had discussed this morning in the pre-market prep live stream was, let's see how price is going to respond versus that prior day low. As you know, I like to come into the session with one primary reference point if I can, and then just take it from there. So let's take a look at the actual action here. Pre-market, what we see coming into GDP, right? There's our prior day low marked on the chart. So you get a little bit of a bounce there. Price initially trades higher, rejects that 50-80, rejects that prior day low, which paves the way for price to trade down into the 50-60, where there is absolutely no bid. In fact, it bounces and then rejects that 50-60, and then down into the 50-35, which ended up being the main watch for this morning. Now, looking at the structure here, we can see the support in this 50-35, 50-30 area. This also happens to be this, if we look at the current structure, it happens to be this range's value area low, which is usually going to be a pretty significant level. So it aligns nicely with a level of interest we've already had there. Remember, this level is, it's one we've been watching from last week, so there's not a recent add to the notes or anything like that. There's a level we've had on watch. Coming into the session, keep it pretty simple. We want to see how this area digests, right? Now, the setup in NQ is definitely a little bit better for today, which we'll go over in a second. But what we have here is, look at this action pretty much all morning, consolidation, right? Just a range. So this is going to be a tradable intraday range. You have this nice rejection versus VWAP. This is going to be one of the easier money setups for today's session. And then later into the morning, later into early afternoon, we get that push higher. We get that move up through the session highs, up through VWAP, a little bit of a pullback there, and then pretty much sets up for a trend day higher to pretty much negate the entirety of that GDP sell-off, right? So now, as always, the question is, what is next? Well, pretty much right back to where we were with yesterday's main focus point, right? That 50-80 level of interest. So price has traded down into what we could consider almost into that near-term range low, right? Not quite there into that 5K level, but traded down. Now we're back into the 50-80. So what I want to see for tomorrow is how price is going to trade versus today's high, and whether buyers have the steam to push this thing into 5100 and then 5120 again. Now we know there are sellers clearly sitting right through here, right? So this continues to be a key area of resistance that we want to be monitoring. You can even see some of the sellers stepping in into the close here with the wick that is developing on this hourly candle. So depending on what type of overnight action we have, we'll kind of determine what I'm going to be leaning on for tomorrow morning, but most likely it is going to be that prior day high as the main reference point, as well as this 50-80 level. I'd be cautious with longs up into this 5100 and this 5120 zone, simply because as price starts to approach, a near-term range high, we have to expect that there's going to be some sellers sitting in this area. Okay. So that's ES. The structure has developed quite nicely, right? We do have a near-term range to work with now, which is solid. Ranges can be really good trading opportunities as long as you have strong reference points to work with and you're not overly biased coming into any type of session within the middle of the range, right? So let's jump into NQ here. So NQ, very similar as far as the approach. We had this key pivot rejected yesterday. It's kind of the main watch from Wednesday after Monday, Tuesday rally. Get the rollover on Wednesday after price test that key pivot. Get the rejection, meta earnings, right? Follow through down through the low. And then what we wanted to see, again, very similar to ES, was that reaction versus prior day low. So pre-GDP, you have the rejection up there into prior day low, a little bit of a quick blip higher, essentially. Rejection of the prior day low, that 17,525 upside level of interest. Price rolls over. I had shared a updated voice note right ahead of the open, about 5 minutes before the open, that NQ we wanted to see primarily, how is the 17,300 going to be treated? Is this area going to be holding as support? Again, not a new level that we added. This has been on watch for the past couple of weeks here. Look at that hourly bar, and more importantly, let's take a look at the 30-minute really quick. So take a look at that 30-minute hammer, right? Then you get the follow through price. Sellers cannot negate that 30-minute hammer. So phenomenal follow through to the upside. We see a nice structure through here, a little bit of a pullback, right? And then this was one of the better moves from this morning's session up into the 17,420. So right around this area, not all that surprising to see that pullback there. Price pulls back into the session. This is the session volume point of control. Take a look at the 5-minute. So you can see all the volume that has been done through here. So price pulls back into that session volume point of control. We watch how the structure develops there, keeping in mind that that 30-minute hammer that we were talking about a moment ago still has not been negated. So buyers still in control versus that key area of support. Key levels holding. We have a nice structure that develops. This you can consider, reaccumulation, and then you get that nice trend higher. One of the voice note updates that I'd share was that if that strength continued above 420, watch for the gap fill. And that's exactly what we saw. Price trades up through that 420 yet again, and you get the gap fill into 520. Now, once that gap is filled, easiest money trade is done, in my opinion. This little bit of continuation here, while it is pretty nice, definitely not going to be an easy trade, especially getting involved with longs that late within a trend day, at least in my opinion. That tends to be a more challenging trade for me personally anyway. So avoided all of this. Actually, quite frankly, was done 1 hour into the session, even earlier than that, about 45 minutes. But as far as what we want to see for tomorrow here on NQ, if I could get this chart working, look at the structure here, right? So very similar to what we have been discussing in ES here. I'm going to consider this near-term range. Right, it's trading within a near-term range here. I want to see if buyers are going to continue to pay up into what has previously been resistance, or if this starts to roll over again into a lower high, maybe give a retest down into the lows here, or perhaps even the true area of support down through there. So point is, price right through here, kind of mid-range. We do have some mid-range reference points to lean on. Ideally, what we can see is a move outside of today's range for tomorrow's session. That's probably going to be one of the easier money scenarios that I'll be looking for. And then just taking it day by day, as always. No crystal ball or anything like that here. Just looking at how the structure builds out. Developing a couple of game plans, a couple of scenarios that we may like to see unfold. And then looking for that setup where we can get involved with that thesis that we have for the session. So hope that makes sense. Hope you guys had a great session. I talked to many of you via direct message, and it looks like a lot of people posted some phenomenal days today. So congratulations. If not, no worries. Study today's action. There was definitely some textbook action for today, some easy money plays within today's action. You want to be studying that. You want to be reviewing, looking at your mistakes, looking at things you may have overlooked. If you have any questions about any of that, feel free to shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to help out. Other than that, see you guys tomorrow morning for the pre-market prep live stream. Have a great afternoon. Later. All right, I'm back with a very quick update here. I noticed the extension move after hours on the back of Microsoft and Google earnings. Hadn't processed the video yet. Hadn't edited the video yet, so I figured I'd share a little bit of an update before uploading the video. So now we have price back into this key near-term high, right? Very obvious pivot right here on NQ, the 17,800 level. This is going to be the main watch heading into tomorrow's session. We do have PCE tomorrow morning as well. So price going to be trading within, most likely, depending on what that overnight action looks like, but price most likely going to be trading within a key pivot here heading into PCE. So main watch is going to be the reaction versus this pivot. Now, sellers, of course, like I said, they want to maintain price below this pivot point. If buyers are able to show acceptance above this 800 level, right, we'll be looking at a test of last week's volume point of control right through here, 17,900, and then up into 17,950 and potentially the prior daily time frame breakdown point. So 17,800 is a very, very important level for the sellers to defend. We do have incredibly strong action today, right? Especially on the back of those Microsoft and Google earning reports. So let's see how price continues to build out versus this key pivot. And we'll see what it is looking like in the morning. Now, ES, very similar. Trading up into near-term resistance, right? 5120. The same pivot we've been watching for 2 weeks now. Now, sellers are going to want to defend this point, right? They're going to want to be defending this 5120. Doesn't look like they are showing up in strength just yet, right? But the main watch here on ES is going to be this 5120. Keep in mind, this is weekly highs. So ES currently trading up into weekly highs, near-term resistance zone. Again, if buyers are able to show acceptance above this 5120, there's a volume void right above, which I've talked about in previous session recaps. So may see a quick test, quick move up into 5150, and then potentially getting back into that 5170, 5185 upside levels. This is if, keyword being if, acceptance is seen above that 5120. So see how the overnight action is looking into PCE tomorrow, but this pivot is going to be the primary watch. All right, see you guys.